when you're starting your own business and thinking about these things very early, think about everything that you are creating just in the day to day. Are you writing things down? Are you creating an employee manual? What exactly are you creating in your business? Are there courses? Are there written materials? Is it a speaking thing? Start thinking about all the different things that you're actually making, and then go figure out with an attorney or through some online research how those things are protected, because a logo versus a written material are protected in two very different ways.
Welcome back to another episode of Soul Shift Sessions podcast, where we have deep, transformative conversations to help you transform your mind to transform your life. I'm your favorite freedom and financial wellness coach, Coach Sapphire Star. And of course, I have with me my favorite co-host,
Kyle McCloud.
And today I'm super, super excited for our special guest that we have on today. Just a little intro of how when I met our special guest last year, I was a part of a 12-week business accelerator startup program called Spark Savannah. And I remember it like it was yesterday because she was my favorite guest speaker. And it was just, she walked in, she was this just ray of sunshine. And then further, I realized, oh my gosh, she's a wealth of information. And today's conversation, we are going to talk about owning your creativity. And so creativity is powerful, but it also can be exploited. And so today we are talking with Miss Paisley Piasecki, attorney and creative strategist, to unpack what every creative entrepreneur and business owner needs to know about contracts, intellectual property, i.e. IP, and ownership. Welcome to Soul Shift Sessions. Paisley.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. And that was a lovely introduction. Like, I am honored. Thank you for that. That should be on my business card. She is a ray of sunshine and a wealth of knowledge. So thank you.
You're
Oh,
welcome.
you're right.
You're welcome.
Know
You're
you later.
welcome.
That was
Welcome
awesome.
to the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Just tell us, that was my intro, but tell the soul shifters a little bit more about who you are.
Sure. Thank you. Oh my gosh, where do I begin? So I am based in Savannah, Georgia. Like you said, I'm a lawyer and creative strategist. I actually don't even like calling myself a lawyer sometimes. I like to call myself a freelance legal and creative strategist or freelancer sometimes. So I do work entirely on my own. I'm not affiliated with a firm or anything right now. It's really just me. I don't know. My life story, I guess, in a nutshell would be I was born and raised in California, and I have no connection to the South. I actually came to Savannah by way of a vacation, and it ended up turning into my getaway place from New York. I went to school at Boston University, and I studied advertising, which is really where my creative background began. I started out in political science and was bored out of my school. Like, I wanted to put forks in. So it was great. And I was like, I feel like this is what I want to do. Super interested in policy and like speaking French, et cetera. I was like, no, this is it. So I joined the communication school, and what started happening was I was working with other people in my program who were doing theater productions as kind of their after school hobby or their extracurricular. And these were people who were really passionate about theater, but they were not in Boston University's theater program. So this was dedicated for people who really did it on the side. And all of these students or a lot of them were going elsewhere over their summers to work in New York City or other places with really big theater companies. And so I got on that bandwagon, got to work with some Broadway theater companies during college, which was amazing. And that's really when I started seeing that, yes, I had a creative skill set. I was working in marketing, interning. I was the house manager for a theater company in Boston. Like, I had all of the creative there, but I really wanted to explore this idea of law school. And everyone who I talked to about it, even if I didn't really know what being a lawyer or going to law school really meant at the time, people were saying, if you have the opportunity to go, you should go. And so I got a full ride scholarship to New York Law School, which was super exciting. And to me, that was the universal sign of, yes, you need to go. And because if you have the opportunity to go on a full ride, you should absolutely go. And so I really focused everything that I did in law school around intellectual property, contracts, business, like really staying focused because I knew that any other area of the law was not for me. Like I was not one of those kids that was like, I'm gonna go be a real estate lawyer. I'm just gonna figure out. Nope. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to work with creatives or be in creative industries. I was actually pretty keen on being a talent agent or an entertainment attorney, producer, et cetera, and maybe using my legal degree as just a back pocket tool. And then COVID hit. And I graduated from law school in May 2020. So pretty much my entire last third of law school was COVID filled. Yes. And so I was very lucky by that point. I had secured a job at a large firm in New York, which people call it big law, but for people who aren't in the world, I say it's like suits level law, like kind of like big corporate, like kind of like one of the law firms that you read about in the Wall Street Journal or like when something big happens in the corporate world, like one of those places. And I very luckily had that job secured. And so for the first 3.5 years, I worked at this firm doing intellectual property and data privacy on corporate transactions, mergers, acquisitions. And then I also worked with some nonprofits and other more, offhand IP stuff. But eventually I decided I really wanted to move to Savannah. I was coming here just as my weekend getaway. I was exploring. I also had an Instagram account, which some people still know about, that was dedicated to like just photos and understanding the low country, et cetera. And I eventually moved here about 1.5 years ago, almost 2 years at this point. And I worked at a small firm doing corporate and real estate for a minute. And then after that experience, I mean, it was a great experience and wonderful people, but I really knew that I wanted to be solo at that point. Like it wasn't really time for me to wait and see. It was time for me to launch and go because I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that the Savannah area needed what I want to do. And so my practice now and my career really is multifaceted. I have a legal practice and a creative practice per se. On the legal side, I help out with intellectual property, contracts, business matters. And on the creative side, I'm the social media manager for a growing fitness company. I have website clients, and I also just started a Substack service business, which is exciting. And so I'm really happy that now I have a very multifaceted career here in Savannah.
I love that. See, I told you guys.
Yeah.
Ray of sunshine, wealth
Wealth of knowledge.
of knowledge. Like
Oh,
we can
those-
end the podcast right there. Like, oh my God. Like that was
thank you.
amazing. What an amazing story of just following your passions and pursuing what you're passionate and knowing that early on and making the pivots and making the adjustment and making the changes, but not being afraid to just go for it. Like I love that energy and I feel like that's a mindset. Can you speak around that mindset or like what
Yeah.
inspired you or how did you get to this place or were you always like this?
Oh gosh, thank you. And that's very kind of you to say. I will say I've always been a pretty determined person and also very independent. Some aspects of my story that I didn't share, which touches on this. I'm an only child. So I've really had to fend for myself. And other only children listening will understand, but it's a very different experience. And you really do gain independence and a sense of individuality, I think, earlier than maybe some other kids who have siblings because you really are by yourself. It's not to say someone who has siblings can't have that. It's just a very different experience. So that was thing one. Thing two, I voluntarily chose to go to boarding school when I was 14 years old, which was very unique for someone my age. And especially at that time in the early 2000s, I was not sent to boarding school. I voluntarily went. And so if that says anything about my personality, I don't know. And so I mean, my father went to boarding school. And so that was always something that they thought about for me. If that they were never going to push me away or force me away. They always just said, if you found a place that you really liked, we would definitely be open to it. And I love my boarding school. I'm still very involved with them. And so, going to an all girls boarding school, my boarding school was very passionate about teaching their young women how to succeed on their own and be independent and be ready to face the world after graduation and, not only do well in college, like, yes, it was a college prep school, but just be really well-rounded, passionate individuals. And so I really do credit a lot of who I am to those years, because you're there from the ages of like 14 to 18. Those are your most formative years. And so I really do think they're a huge part in who I am today. But yeah, I've always kind of had this in me. And what's really interesting is I think the through line after everything I've been through in the past 5 years, because it was a journey getting to this point. I recently went solo like 3 months ago, and I decided to go solo in September 2025, which is when I quit my last firm job. And I really struggled in law firms, really, really struggled. And I can only equate it to just being in the right career, but the wrong place. And so every time I have had to make a decision so far, whether it's deciding what law firm to go to, whether it was moving to Savannah, whether it was going on my own, it was having the privilege and the gusto to be able to say, this is not what I want. I want to do this, and I'm going to go do it, no matter what it takes. And I think there's a lot of layers to it that go just beyond having the dedication and determination that we could totally get into if you want. But I think for me, it's always been in pursuit of my happiness and overall health, and understanding that, that if I don't feel personally fulfilled in my career, and not everyone is like this, but if I don't feel personally fulfilled in my career and what I'm doing and how I'm serving people, I'm not going to be as happy. And some people can do a job and it's just their job. They show up at the office, they do the finance, and they leave, and maybe they don't love it, but they're not emotionally attached to it. They're just like, this is my job. I show up, I'm good at it, and I go. There are millions of people like that. I'm not one of those people. I am very invested in what I do. It's who I am. And I've really stayed true to myself in all of these decisions.
My question is not as impactful.
Okay.
You said that it was like a Suits environment for one of those places, and I was like, well, how
Yeah.
much was it like Suits? Like, was it like?
Yeah, will be honest, I have not watched Suits, but I will
Okay.
say that's what I compare it to, because I know what it is, and I know that it's like that's what like they're modeling after that part of the industry. I worked with the most amazing people. I really think I hit the jackpot in terms of that industry, and I've said this multiple times, not on just this podcast. I'm still very close with my former bosses at that firm. They are amazing individuals, and I stayed there as long as I did because of them. I knew that I had it great. Like, when I decided to leave, I was not searching to go to another big firm, because I knew that where I was at the time was truly the best people environment for me. We're all very close still, and that I knew I was losing that when I left. But for me, it was just the department I was in worked pretty much 90% of the time in mergers and acquisitions. And I mean, it's all Wall Street deals, and you got to know what you're signing up for. And I sort of knew what I was signing up for. I sort of didn't, because I don't have any family members who are like big shot lawyers or working in finance. My dad's a doctor. My mom works in fitness. Like, it was a totally new world for me. What I will say is, it requires a level of physical and mental capacity that some people are born with and some people are not. And I did it for 3.5 years, and I was physically and mentally ready to go. I was probably ready after 2 years, but it's just, you are required to be available 24/7. The example I love to give to people is I've had multiple instances in that job where on a Thursday night or Friday morning, you think, wow, I'm actually gonna get a free weekend. This is great. And then Friday afternoon, you get an assignment that's due Sunday morning, and there goes your weekend. So the unpredictability and the ups and downs are really exciting to some people. For me, it was really hard on my body, and I had to make a decision 3.5 years in that was very much based on getting my health and wellness back in check after that experience. So my body was pretty much done.
A lot of what you're saying is in alignment with the things that we've talked about in previous episodes of this podcast, such as changing your environment. You know, you got up and you left New York. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
left New York and went to Savannah. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is that I remember teaching a class in Savannah and telling the client, you know, my mother and father were talking about moving here. They have no family here. they know no one here. And I have no idea why they want to come here. And she says, meet my husband and I for dinner. And I'll show you why your parents want to move to Savannah. And so after meeting them, getting on a plane, going back home to New Jersey, I walk in the door and I don't even say hi. I say, Patrice, welcome to Savannah.
Where it just gets you. I have a really good friend, one of my best friends, and her family is like my own at this point. I remember she was one of the first people I met online here in Savannah, like someone who was just one of my followers, and we were talking, etc. And she was asking me like how I found Savannah, and I was like, I don't know, I'm just really drawn to it. And she said, Savannah, you don't choose Savannah, Savannah chooses you. It's a whole, there's a whole theory about it with the locals that like Savannah chooses you. And so I strongly feel that was my situation as well.
Yeah. And someone that is from Savannah, I do believe, and I know a lot of people speak on this, is that I took Savannah for granted. And honestly, it wasn't until I left and traveled all over the world. I've been to 27 different countries.
Oh my.
Yeah. And I moved back last year. And it wasn't until I left and came back that I was like, Savannah is pretty darn awesome. And all the things that I just took for granted and just thought, because when you live in a small town, you know, Savannah's a country city. When you live in a small town, you believe it's like a microcosm of the world. You think every place is like Savannah.
Yeah.
And then you leave and be like, oh, wait, where are the trees? Where's moss? Where's squares?
There's no trees.
You don't realize it. And then you're like, wow, Savannah is so special. But it's something that I've grown. I've fallen back in love with my city, but I just took it for granted because it was all I knew. I didn't leave Savannah until I was 30. And so, but it took me leaving to come back to really fully appreciate my hometown. And I love my city. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm glad people are flocking here and they love it as well. You know, we're the hostess city. We're not called the hostess city for no reason. Right. And so we've earned that title. I'm going to shift a little bit because you've mentioned IP a lot. And so I wanted you, if you could, explain to the soul shifters or even the layperson, like what exactly is IP, intellectual property, and how it relates to creators and entrepreneurs.
Sure. So intellectual property, I equate that word to like the cloud. No one really knows what it means. I love it. Intellectual property is this big word that I like to boil down to things we create. And so things that encompass intellectual property that a lot of people have probably heard about so far are trademarks, copyright, patents, trade secrets, like those very technical words for things that you see in everyday life. But really what it is for me is things we create. And that's how I like to boil it down to clients and people, is that it's really everywhere. One of my favorite people in the world, Tony, who's the IP professor on Instagram, loves to say IP is everywhere. And it really is. So for example, if I look at my cell phone, there's the Apple logo on it. That's probably a trademark. There's probably software in there that's patented by Apple. You know, maybe they host some of their software as a trade secret. You know, it really is everything, especially in digital age. Everything we touch and do there's probably some element of intellectual property. I mean, I'm looking at my water bottle right now in the hotel I'm in, and there's like 4 different logos on there just on the front. So you have to think about it like very holistically. And so what I do is I enjoy helping creatives and businesses understand what they own and how to protect it. Understanding what you own is crucial to then learning how to protect it, because I don't think people understand so much of what's in a business is something that a company owns or should own. Or if you're on the freelancer side, understanding when you work with a business, what should you own, what is naturally owned by the company, et cetera. What does your contract say? I mean, it's so fascinating to me how many people I talk to who they go, yeah, we tried putting a contract together. We just used ChatGPT, or we just did ourselves and put it down, and I assume I own what I make, or we assume they own. And it's like, you can't really assume in these kinds of situations. There are clear rules for everything, and then there's contracts, et cetera. And so I love helping people figure out all of that and apply it very practically in their businesses. And it can get complicated. It can't get messy, depending upon the situation. But seeing people's faces light up and have that aha moment when I explain to them how things actually work with what they're doing is so fulfilling to me. And also, I should just say anything I say, I probably should have said this before I started, but I know I'm going to go into legal stuff. And this is just, healthy disclaimer. Anything I say here is just general education purposes only. It's not individual legal advice. And if you're listening to me talk about all of this and you're super pumped, that's awesome. Please go find an attorney. I'm an attorney, not your attorney.
Party,
Yeah.
not so attorney.
Yeah.
I am an attorney, not your attorney on this podcast. So it's for educational purposes only, not legal advice. But anyhow, yes, that's exactly what I love to do. It's super fulfilling to me. And I'm very fortunate to be creating a career that's around that.
And that's why when you,
Both of you. Okay. We got a crowd.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
And that's why when you came and spoke at Spark Savannah, it was that, like you speak of, like it was the way Paisley broke everything down. It was that aha moment, like, oh, that's what that means. Because you hear the jargon, you hear the lingo, and you're like, what is, it's very intimidating. It can be overwhelming. But the way you broke everything down was like, oh, it made it so much more palatable to understand the process and where to even get started. And so my question was, as a creative and an entrepreneur, like at what point should someone start thinking about trademark and copyright and what they own and what they create?
That's a great question. As a lawyer and creative myself who knows about all of this, the answer is today or yesterday.
Oh.
But I think realistically, I would never want someone to get overwhelmed by this and prevent it from them starting. I think if someone just starts and then figures this out later to a degree, that's fine. Earlier than better. But it really does start today and yesterday and when you're creating the business. I mean, there are issues even with just starting a business and understanding who owns what. I think if anyone is going to think about starting a business, it should be top of mind and really like a big consideration from the get-go that people have that don't understand is a thing like right away is even as simple as if someone makes something for you in your business, there's intellectual property implications with that. So if someone is starting a business and they have someone design a logo for them or they have another person doing their website, there are intellectual property implications, all of that. And so I would say, yes, like immediately when you start thinking about a business idea, you should absolutely be thinking about these concepts. But I'd say where this often kicks in is usually when people start working with other people or they're starting to think about that trademark, et cetera. There's a lot of considerations when, thinking about trademarking something. Usually it's a business name or a product name that someone wants to potentially trademark. And there's a lot of different layers to it that we're obviously not going to be able to cover on this podcast. But I mean, I really think anyone who's interested in business needs to be thinking about this stuff as soon as possible.
My question is twofold. One, which is with the explosion of AI over these past several years, what impact has it had on the industry? And then also, what has AI changed from an understanding perspective for the average business person on this side? Has it muddied the water? Has it made things clearer? Has it made things more complicated?
Oh gosh, we could go for hours about this. I'd say I'm going to answer this from the legal industry and the creative industry side, because I think those are two very different things. And I'm going to start with your second question first. I think AI and tools like ChatGPT are amazing, but we just don't know enough yet to call them safe from a legal perspective. I often tell people in workshops and just, when I have conversations about this elsewhere, I think tools like ChatGPT are great as a tool. They're great for organization. They're great for getting ideas. They're great for understanding things or doing quick searches like a Google search if you need information about something that's like very, not high risk, et cetera. But from a legal perspective, I don't think it's safe to be using them for content creation at all at this point. And I really discourage people from using tools like ChatGPT or similar ones to create images, to create video content, photo content, anything super important in the business that is going to be used as like a fundamental creative element. I really think the focus should be original. And that's because you can just Google this and just see the variety of headlines that come up. There have been plenty of lawsuits and issues as in the past few years with ChatGPT and similar companies, being called out for potentially using third-party copyrighted material. So there's one with the New York Times that came out. I think the allegation there is that ChatGPT is using paywalled content to feed. There's also issues with photos. Where are the photos coming from for them to generate all of those images? There's major licensing companies that are seeing this and going, hey, those are our photos that you actually have to pay for, but they're going into ChatGPT. And so what's really interesting, I was looking at the ChatGPT terms the other day, and in one section, it says that the end user, like us, the users, own the content. But then that begs the question, well, then why are all of these issues coming up and these lawsuits, et cetera? And so I think from a practical perspective, AI has really changed the game for efficiency and for productivity and for getting things done. I'm very hesitant to advise anybody to consider it as a solid content creation tool. From an industry perspective and how it's changed things, obviously it has changed the world at this point. In the creative industries, I've been hearing a good amount of conversation about it affecting creative careers and people who were interested in a particular creative field are actually not so interested in going into that anymore because it's being dominated by AI. And where's the creativity in that? So I think that's really sad. From a legal industry perspective, it's very interesting as to what AI is doing for us. And so AI is starting to be a more commonly accepted tool in practice in the legal industry. There are some very reputable companies coming out with awesome AI tools to help with legal research, legal document review, etc. What I'm finding is it's really up to each law firm and lawyer as to whether they use it or not. There are still plenty of issues with confidentiality and attorney ethics when using AI tools, because if a lawyer, for example, puts in potentially client confidential information in a tool like ChatGPT, that technically breaks confidentiality and privilege. Because it's not the same as me using like Microsoft Outlook as like emails. Like you're basically throwing it into the unknown, and ChatGPT could use that information to inform other things out there. And so the lawyer's use of AI is definitely a huge conversation happening right now, because there are ways that companies are leveraging it for productivity and efficiency. But that said, I can't, it's a weird place when people are saying, well, I started this contract on ChatGPT. Can you fix it for me? Or we use this contract, we just made it with ChatGPT. I think it's a very interesting conundrum in the sense that I see how that can be a really great resource, but it also scares me when people are like, yeah, we just made this contract on ChatGPT. I'm like, do you know what it even says? Like, has anyone walked you through what these words mean? Like, that's where the tension is for me. It's like, do you know what it means? Have you had someone look at it? It's not tailored to your situation. Yeah, AI is really doing a number on a lot of industries right now, including the legal one, for better or for worse. I think there's a lot going on with it. And I'll be very curious as to where we are in 10 years on both sides of the house.
So the jury's still out right now.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Wow, it's the things like, and it's important to have these conversations for us to start thinking about, because especially when you speak on being a creative and AI as a tool, and it's like, well, is it taking over, or are people using it to enhance what they're doing? And I think that's the conversation that people are having. But then there's also people that just allow it to just completely take over in terms of creativity. For me as a creative, I'm like, okay, I look at it as a tool because I am a very creative person. but it's like I still have my thought process and things I want to do. So even with using AI, I'm like, this is so frustrating because this is not what I'm trying to convey. So I'm always
Yeah.
having to just be like, okay, give me a frame and then I'll just build out from there because you don't have a soul. It's like,
Yeah.
I feel like AI is great, but it doesn't have a soul. I feel like that's
Right.
something that could never replace. But I guess as we continue to train it and generations are coming along with, we have a generation of children who don't know they was pretty much born with a device in their hand, right? They've been born with social media. They don't know what it's like not to have a phone, not to have social media. And I think at some point that's what we're moving to is going to be a generation of people who don't know what life is without AI or what's real and what's not because it's being trained and developed now. So yeah.
1000%. If they were born in the past 5 years, they literally were born with AI at their disposal, at their parents'
Yeah.
disposal. So yeah, you are 1000% correct on that. Paisley, if I heard correctly, because I know you spoke saying that using AI to generate content was something that you're warning against
Mhm.
because of the implications of like where that's coming from. So if I'm hearing you correctly, if I go on Canva and put a prompt and it generates a realistic image, it's possible that yes, that image was generated, but it was still inspired by something else that is protected. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah. So I haven't used Canva's AI tools. I've seen the logo maker. I have not seen the image generator. I will say that. I use Canva, but everything I do on Canva is really like my original stuff for using my clients' images, etc. So I can't speak to that. But I'm gonna say this broadly as if you're gonna do it with ChatGPT, and I'm gonna give you an example too. But yes, that's what I'm warning against because you don't know where it's coming from.
Okay.
I mean, maybe Canva or a similar tool has a policy that says like all of our images are from our library and you can use them. Like I would feel better if that was in the policy. If it explicitly said something that said along the lines of all the images we use in our AI tool are properly licensed to us or we have ownership of them and you get a license to use it, that's great. But I would not feel the same way with ChatGPT. Here's a really good example of like the difference I'm trying to explain. So I've gone on ChatGPT myself just to see what it would draw up for me. And I said, you are a social media content creator. And your client is a lawyer who wants to talk about intellectual property, create a social media calendar for the next 4 weeks about different intellectual property topics, just to see what it spit out at me. And it was really interesting. It gave me some really good ideas. I ended up not really using it, but it was cool to see, what its concepts were. And it was pretty on point for someone like myself who would want to make social media content in that realm. Here's another example, though, where I would say this is not great and a great example of like where you're going to get in trouble. One, if you use ChatGPT and similar tools to create AI generated images, more often than not, everybody is going to know. They have a certain look about them. They have this weird, glowy, soft look. They just don't look real. And so that's reason number one from a creative perspective where I say, maybe think twice. Another thing to keep in mind is the errors that it will make and can make. So I'm not talking about Canva. I'm talking about more ChatGPT or, similar tools. But I was just scrolling through my Instagram one day on a major holiday this past year, like major holiday where people would say like, happy blah, 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 like we'll see you next weekend, etc. And a business had this photo up and it was an image of, a girl doing something in relation to this holiday. And this person was wearing a flag outfit. There was a flag in the background, etc. And I initially just scrolled through it. And then something in my head, because I knew this business, and I go, why does that look weird? And I flipped back to it and the American flag was backwards. The stars and stripes were like in different sections. This person had like a weird shape on their arm and a weird glow to them. And it
Did they
was
have an
just
extra
very
finger?
AI generated image. And so it's just not reliable. You don't know who's like, maybe like I don't even know whose face. Like that was probably not a real person. Where did they get that information? Like where, like the stuff has to come from somewhere, is what I'm trying to say. And so as a legal and creative, maybe there's way more technical and safe ways to be going about things, but that's what I advise people of when they're talking about content creation is that one, people are going to know. And secondly, there's gonna be issues. And thirdly, you just don't know where the stuff's coming from at the end of the day.
Interesting.
Yeah. So as you know, my question now is, what is like someone's getting started and they're entrepreneur creative, like what are the steps that they can start taking to protect their creativity and protect what they own, just from a matter of like, oh, I'm just getting started. What, like, we talked about the win, like you said yesterday, but it's like, okay, what are those steps to
Yeah.
begin this?
Okay. Well, first, like boiling it down to just very basic steps someone can take if they don't even know where to start and they don't even know what I'm talking about on this
Yeah.
podcast. There are a lot of lawyers on Instagram and social media talking about these things. And so people can try to find reputable lawyers on the gram, social media who talk about this stuff just to get their juices flowing. There are also a variety of online resources that people can look into. I personally don't have one of these sites, but there's contract template sites and a lot of the same people who do the contract templates have great resources up there, like checklists or things, resources of things to be thinking about when you start your business. So that's thing one. Um, a big piece of like older sister wisdom I love to give to people from a business and legal perspective is never be afraid to get things on paper. And if you think that the way to think about that, especially if someone's just starting their own business, super small, like they don't know a lot yet, is if you were actually running a major corporation, would you get this in writing on a contract? And if
Mhm.
the answer is yes, then you probably should be getting it in a contract. And so that's a great example of someone who says, "Oh, I'm gonna have this designer I found on Fiverr or some other website, or maybe someone they met draw up a logo for me or something." Um, would there usually be a contract for that sort of thing if you were a huge major corporation? Probably. So why aren't you doing it? And I think, especially in a town like Savannah, I've had this conversation with people here and there. Is Savannah is a handshake town. We're very community oriented. Um, People operate on handshake deals here mostly. And I think it's so great that people put that level of trust into people here. It's awesome. And I love that we have a strong community. But I have also heard stories about things happening where people don't get things in writing and it goes sour. And,
And we shook on it. We had
yeah, actually, or they'll say, oh, well, this happened and this went down. And I'll say, well, what does the contract say? There was a contract. And I'm like, okay, well, and we can have a whole other conversation about like what is an oral versus a written contract, all that. But needless to say, I do think something to think about at the beginning is if a major corporation would get in writing, you probably should too. And I also think kind of to what I said earlier, when you're starting your own business and thinking about these things very early, think about everything that you are creating just in the day to day. Are you writing things down? Are you creating an employee manual? What exactly are you creating in your business? Are there courses? Are there written materials? Is it a speaking thing? Start thinking about all the different things that you're actually making and then go figure out with an attorney or through some online research how those things are protected, because a logo versus a written material are protected in two very different ways. It's usually a matter of trademark law versus copyright law. I know a lot of people here who are listening probably have questions about trademarks. And again, there are so many nuances to that we just can't possibly cover in this conversation. But I will say, when you think about a business name or a product name or something that you think is worth getting a trademark for, earlier the better. Why? Because if you wait, I mean, I think there are reasons to wait, depending upon the situation, and also because cost is a factor. But if you are actually serious about your company and you want it to, and it's growing, it's expanding, you want it to be a big deal, et cetera, and maybe you want it to expand to across the country, have big plans for it, I think it's definitely worth doing a search with the um, USPTO trademark search or working with a trademark attorney to see what else is out there. Because if you love the name you came up with your business and you want to get a trademark one day, if you wait to do that process years down the road, someone else could already have that registered with the USPTO. And so again, a lot of nuance here that I can't really get into on this podcast because it would be hours. Terms of business names, that's definitely something to keep in mind, that if you really love what you're choosing, whether it's in your head or actually actively using it, I think it's a really good idea to start the trademark search process to make sure that no one else is already using what you have in mind, and whether it does make sense for you to start that process earlier than later.
Wow, powerful. That is amazing to like now they have a roadmap to get started. Thank you so much for
Yeah, of
sharing.
course.
Again, wealth of information, ray of
Wow.
sunshine. Like
Ray,
I absolutely love that. This is the evidence of that. And so, Paisley, we are now at my favorite part of the podcast, which is our rapid fire round, where we ask you
yeah,
questions and you give us 1 to 2 minutes for your answer. So if you're ready, we can go ahead and jump right into the
go
rapid
for it.
fire round. Yeah. So, what's one word that describes you today?
Today,
As opposed to
evolving. I'm evolving. I'm
Oh,
evolving. I'm in a very interesting, like I said, I went solo with my career in freelance per se about 3 months ago. And I am still in a major transition of my life. Like someone asked me a question yesterday, how do you define success? And I don't even have a definition for that right now because things are really evolving for me. Um, I'm in a very transitory, very evolving phase of my life. And it's a lot of fun.
I love
I
that.
love that. And I hear like to me when you say that, I was like, man, that's very courageous. Like
Oh, thank you.
that's amazing. I love that. I love that. What's one book you think everyone should read at least once?
Okay, I might get flack for this. Someone might give me flack for this. I think Mel Robbins' Let Them theory needs to be read at least once.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah.
I say I might get flack for it 'cause I know people have very strong opinions about her. I know the negative opinions are very strong about her and people have thoughts. And she's also not like a licensed therapist. So that's one thing to put out there. What I will say is that book really changed my outlook on dealing with relationships and navigating difficult relationships and also just how I respond to things. It's probably going to be an annual read for me at this point, just a reminder of how to live life. She I will say she doesn't there are some elements in the book and some things she talks about that I think she could have gone deeper and um gloss over some of the challenges that people have with using the let them theory and
Yeah.
people who know what I'm talking will know what I'm saying if they've read the book or the general principle. But overall, it's an amazing read and I think everyone's got to read it.
That's wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah, I read that last year actually.
What did you
I
read?
was
Did you
really on to Mel Robbins and yeah. What did you say? I'm sorry, I missed it.
did you enjoy the book? Did you love it?
I did. I did. There were some things I was like, can we, like you said, can we expound a little bit more on that? But overall, it's very freeing. The whole theory, like just the base level of the theory, just let them. We
You're
have
so free.
yeah, like we have a friend on the podcast that comes on all the time, and she has this thing is like, that's their life. That's their life because we can get so caught up into
Yeah.
carrying, and it's let them is something very liberating and freeing about that. And so that was my biggest takeaway is like, okay, go ahead, be great. So
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't realize there was negative rhetoric around Mel Robbins.
Yeah.
I
I
didn't know
hope
that.
she's listening to this. I'll tell her I love her. Regardless. Yeah, there are people who say there's been some controversy with the ownership of the let them theory. It's very interesting from an intellectual
Oh,
practice perspective. And there's also comments that like she's not really a licensed therapist or she's talking about something very mental when she's not like a doctor or very high level. But I think what she did is absolutely incredible, and it's very clear that the research is there. I loved the book.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's her experience. It's her
Yeah,
experience.
sure.
So what do you hope people feel after being in your presence?
Ooh, inspired. That feels cliche, but it's inspired. Um, I hope people feel, yeah, inspired to go take things on. I think especially if people know my story the last 5 years, I think I'm a great example of staying true to yourself and marching forward and knowing your worth and what you can do. And like you said, it takes a lot of courage, but I have zero regrets about my decisions in the past 5 years to get to where I am today.
Yes, I've truly felt inspired after meeting you. So yeah.
Thank you.
Last but not least, if your soul could leave a sticky note on the mirror every morning, what would it say?
Oh, that's such a good question. I would say, new day. Like I would just write new day. New day. I am the kind of person who people say I'm really hard on myself, which is weird because I don't feel that way, but if other people are saying it, it's probably true.
Yeah.
I think I have a tendency to think things such as, well, I didn't do it yesterday. If I don't do it today, this isn't good. You know, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that, etc. And what's really been keeping me going is that every day is a new opportunity. I lived a life for 4 years in a high-powered environment where things felt really out of my control. A lot of things have felt totally out of my control for a lot of my life, which is weird because I've had so many amazing experiences and I've made so many big choices and decisions, but it comes from, I lived a few tough years where it felt like my life was not mine and I did not have agency or control over my life, my schedule, and it really felt like chaos. And so I think a product of that has been feeling like, trying to make sure I don't get in that state again, because a lot of, your life is yours. You own your life. Like your life is totally in your control. Yes, there's things that are going to happen that are outside of your control that you have to deal with. I'm not saying that, look, I'm going to live in this bubble of pink goodness all the time. But your life is yours and you make the choices. And, I love what Taylor Swift said in her graduation speech, which was with NYU a few years ago, like her honorary graduation speech. She said, like, the good news is you're on your own. The bad news is you're also on your own. But the good news is that you're on your own. And so it really is all up to you. And so I would write down new day, just so I have that reminder every morning that it's a new day to start over and take whatever.
Well said. Well said. Paisley, thank you so much for joining the conversation. This has been amazing. I've learned so much and I'm truly, truly inspired as a result. And hopefully soul shifters who are inspired too. Paisley, where can people find you and connect with you? Because I know you have a huge social media presence. How can people connect with you and find you?
Oh, thank you. PaisleyPiasecki.com is my website with more about what I do and my rates, etc. If people are interested in that, I can be found at Paisley Piasecki on Instagram and TikTok. My new Substack program I'm doing is at The Stack Stylist, which I'm super excited about. That just launched this week, which is exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And if you're in the Savannah area, I also run a young professionals group called Square 25. And we're just at Square25_Savannah, just all spelled out on Instagram. We're also on the Locals app. And so it is 21 and up. We do gear our events to 20s to 40s age range, but really anyone is welcome. So feel free to find me there too if you're in Savannah as a local resident.
Thank you so much. Listen, guys, this has been another episode of Soul Shift Sessions podcast. If you know someone can use a soul shift, please make sure you share this podcast. Make sure you are also following us on social media, Soul Shift Sessions, as well as you can go to www.soulshiftsessions.com and join the tribe. And also, if you want to be a guest and join the conversation, follow us at www.soulshiftsessions.com. Coach Kyle, any final words for the soul shifters?
Yes. What we don't need in the midst of struggle is shame for being human.
Yeah. And with that, guys, always remember to let your soul glow. Until next time.
So long, everyone.
So long.